that concentration start 500 to 5,000 ppb. So can you any some thought here?
Those are values which exceed by quite a bit our typical values we see in Western Lake Erie. So that is a serious problem, and it's a real burden on water utilities. Obviously, there should be no recreation in those waters. If you have a boat, you should not be out on a boat. You could have just being on the river could expose you to aerosols where you're inhaling cyanobacteria and the toxins. So this is I think a hazardous situation that should be avoided by people and livestock and pets.
Yep.
Yeah,
Okay.
this is our liver.
Okay, this is worse than we typically see in Lake Erie. That's the water treatment plant.
Yeah,
So that's
drinking water treatment.
so there is microcystin in the drinking water. If you can't remove it all, that's a problem. You know, if you have a massive viral attack on the bloom, that's going to release all the toxins into the dissolve phase, and then you might be monitoring toxins every day in the finished water, and it's low, low, low. But if these events can happen very quickly, and then the viruses rupture a lot of the bloom biomass, and those toxins leak out into the dissolve phase, and then the water plant will be unable to handle that pulse of toxin. So not only in order to hopefully the water plants are testing their water every single day.
Yeah, but major problem is we monitor it once a week.
You can't do that.
Right.
You cannot do that. Okay.
That's one of the major issues.
Okay.
Actually, we don't know exactly how much microcystin in the drinking water. I think that is really, really serious.
You need to measure microcystins every day in the finished water, in the drinking water, because you might be able, from 1 week to the next, it might be below the threshold. But you can have events that happen very fast, like a massive lysis of the bloom biomass by viruses or fungi or whatever that will release toxins into the dissolve phase. That goes straight into the plant, and they need extra chemical treatment to deal with the toxin. And if they're not measuring it every day, you're missing those potential pulses of toxin. I think the most important thing is, the techniques for removing toxins are fairly well established and are effective. If during normal bloom periods, the cyanobacteria store the toxin inside the cells, and so the initial stages of water purification are filtering out the cyanobacteria or flocculating them so they settle out. And so that will remove over 95% of the toxin in most situations. If there's a lysis event where the cells are rupturing, then that's a problem. But once you remove the cells from the normal bloom, then there's a number of chemical treatments. There's activated carbon, there's ozone, there's other oxidation treatments, permanganate, that will deal with the toxin. However, as I said earlier, if you have a big lysis event in the bloom and you're releasing dissolved toxin, you need to add more of these chemicals and do it more aggressively. And that's two things. It costs more money, and secondly, you have to test the water every day to make sure you're not getting these pulses of dissolved toxin that require this extra treatment. So I would say that during an active bloom period where there's biomass like what you've shown me on the screen, you should be testing every day. When that goes away, you test weekly. Yes. Yeah, that would be my recommendation. In terms of humans, we know that the primary organ effect is the liver. The acute exposure, which is unlikely, can cause liver failure, and that has happened in some extreme situations. Well known as that case in Brazil, where people at a dialysis clinic were basically given microcystin intravenously and they died. So, but that would never happen. So the main concern is chronic exposure, which will result in liver failure over time or liver cancer if there's chronic exposure. When it comes to animals, certainly they get the acute exposure by drinking water that they encounter in outdoors. And as humans, we know not to drink green water. A animal may not have that choice, and will do that. Now, when it comes to the ecosystem, that's a little more complicated. Certainly, microcystins do affect the lower food web, zooplankton, and so forth. So that can influence, what's happening in the lower food web, the zooplankton feeding on things. But there are other issues that actually go beyond the microcystins. It actually goes to the cyanobacteria themselves. Okay, so when I think of a healthy ecosystem, I think of it, the base of the food web being diatoms and green algae and other things that the zooplankton can eat, and ultimately fish can eat those zooplankton, and then you have trophic levels. What cyanobacteria do is they dominate the biomass, they screen out sunlight for other things, and the other thing they do is they're so good at grabbing inorganic carbon from the water, the pH goes up over 9.5. You have to ask yourself, what likes to live at pH 9.5? It's pretty much just cyanobacteria. So I have a colleague, Steve Wilhelm, who looks at how do diatoms grow at pH 9.5? Well, they don't. Okay, so not only is it microcystins and the other toxins that cyanobacteria make, which is influencing other organisms, it's the presence of the cyanobacteria themselves, which basically shut out and exclude other life forms. So if you want good algae, cyanobacteria win. You're not getting diatoms, you're not getting green algae, because they don't like living under carbon-limited conditions at pH 9.5. And when you get to pH 9.5, you're also losing ammonia, because that'll vent to the atmosphere. So you might be dealing with a low nitrogen situation as well. So those are broad ecosystem effects.
Okay.
Yeah. That is, I think, that's of some concern. I mean, if again, that no single meal is going to hurt you, but if you're combining that with other routes of exposure, aerosol, drinking water, and food, your body would be under continuous assault by low levels of toxin. And so I think any way you're adding on another route of exposure, I don't know if it's additive or synergistic. I don't think anybody really knows that. So I'd be obviously concerned if I'm detecting it all in the food supply.